Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to another new episode, new video of About Skateboarding. Now, if you're new here, my name is Sean, and I do daily videos here on the channel about skateboarding and just the whole world around it. Now, before I begin, if you want to stream any of these episodes in audio, you can go ahead and do that over on both Spotify and over on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, I should say as well. And if you like these videos, make sure you give them a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a fun one where I'm going to be going through, and this is my opinion on it, so feel free to leave whatever you think is, if it's different in your opinion, in the comments below. But just in my opinion, these are the five most consequential tricks in skateboarding in general, of the history of skateboarding overall. I should say modern skateboarding. But yeah, just the 5 tricks that I think are the most important to the development of modern skateboarding from a trick standpoint, and kind of just revolutionize it overall. So that'd be kind of fun to make a video about that. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, for number one, this one should be not really a surprise to anyone. Overall, it's kind of the basis to what skateboarding really is, as far as a modernized version for every trick. And this is gonna be for the trick of the ollie. Now, I didn't actually know too much about who actually invented it, about them themselves. So there was a skateboarder named Alan Gelfand, I believe is how you pronounce it. He is credited with the invention of the ollie back in 1978, and it actually was called back then the ollie pop or ollie air as well. And he was actually a vert skater, transition skater back then, and he was trying to essentially, from what I read about him, make an easier way than having to hold onto the board every time that he went into the air vertically. And he created the ollie, or again ollie pop back then, ollie air, to try and make the transition easier, essentially from between gaps on the vert ramp, and just to get out of it and do tricks as well, which came out later down the road. So I think that the ollie for sure is pretty much easily the most consequential skateboard trick ever invented, or at least like the most like kind of sourceable one, as far as having it be the beginning, or at least how do I put, just the beginning of every real trick overall, so to speak, from that kind of like carved way for everything else, for one thing. So that's what I think is number one, would be the ollie. Now, some of these might be really obvious, and that's just kind of how it goes sometimes, but the next one I believe that is the most important consequential trick in skateboarding is going to be the kickflip, because much like the ollie, it is kind of the inspiration, or the progress, the seed of what a lot of other tricks come with as well, as far as like varial kickflips and the 360 flip and all that. And not surprising that Rodney Mullen invented this back in the 80s, kind of when he was doing all of his own thing, as far as doing a bunch of flatland discovery overall, just skating flatland for years and years and years, and just messing around with his board and popping things around. I didn't find too much more about it besides that he invented it, or he discovered it by basically doing it on accident. And if you have ever seen any interviews with him, or I think he even did a TED Talk about his origins of skateboarding and how he invented things on accident a lot back then, that things that are still even to this day like kind of uninvented, that he just kind of did by messing around. But that again is one of my favorite things about the whole sport of skateboarding, is how really any skateboarder for the most part can invent things really easily, not easily but really quickly. And how back in the 80s and early 90s, how it was so common to have skateboarders really invent new tricks that are now a cornerstone for what we do now, as far as like just an essential trick overall too, which is really cool by itself. So again, that is the ollie, and then now the kickflip. Now for me, again, this is all my opinion on this, so the next thing I feel like that is the most consequential trick ever created would, not surprisingly, again be the heel flip, which is also not surprisingly invented by Rodney Mullen. Again, he did a lot of stuff in the 80s and 90s, and this was apparently done in 1982, according to some AI searches here. So again, I feel like he, as a skater, kind of messed around with everything for hours on end every single day on flatland mostly, and just kind of mess around and just flip the board in different ways. And I mean, that's how he even created the hard flip, I think it was, that he did also as well. So just again, insane skateboarder for what it was. That's number 3. Number 4, in my opinion, would be but the 360 flip, or the tray flip, as it's called in a lot of today's videos, and a lot of what skaters just call it at parks these days. And again, not surprising that also Rodney Mullen invented, or is credited with the invention of that, with another flatland skateboarding trick that was also, from what I read about it, created pretty much by accident, where his back foot accidentally slipped out one day on a kickflip, and just a regular kickflip, and ended up doing a full 360, or almost a 360, and he ended up pushing that forward more and more in that same kind of session, and then he got the 360 varial out of it, and then had to stick it basically. So that'd be number 4 for me as far as just just for revolutionary tricks that are. And what's crazy about the 360 flip or tray flip to me is that it's one of the, in my opinion, one of the hardest tricks to do consistently. Now, some skaters I know that are professionals can do a 360 flip like nothing, like every single try. I was never one of those skateboards. I like when I learned how to do them, it took me probably a few months to learn how to just get the varial get the 360 part of it down, and also a lot longer even to get the kickflip all kind of circulated together into making it be one trick, and even more time to get how to do it, how to make it a really tight combination of both of those as well. So I feel like the 360 flip is one of the more harder tricks just in general, just as a flip trick by itself. But that's just kind of my thoughts on it as well. And then probably, this is my opinion again, but one of the most consequential and this trick was one that was not rumored. I don't want to say rumored, but it was one of the most like challenging tricks ever done, and it was a televised invention as well. If you were alive back then or whatever, back when the X Games back in the 90s was around, that Tony Hawk invented this one, and I actually remember watching him do this live for the first time. And there's a lot of interviews over on YouTube with him about not how he invented it, but just like the process of how much he went through before the actual trick and before that day actually happened to how he actually got there. And it was crazy how it took him like over 10, 15 years to actually get the confidence level to be able to just produce that many spins. And how he says in a lot of the interviews that after he like kind of like learned how to do the 540, that after that it became the 900 being the next kind of logical step, but that the entire 900 trick for a variation in a twisting standpoint is a very, very completely blind landing, and you have to either commit to it overall completely or you just bail out. And what sucks, he said in a lot of interviews about it, is that when you bail out on it, you have usually no idea where you're facing or which direction you're going to be heading to, and how you're going to land. And that's what made him, I guess, I don't say it takes so long, but that's what made him so nervous to try and stick it. Is that like, and that's also one of the things that he runs into a lot, not these days anymore with his age, but like when he was doing it a lot more consistently, in demos, and when he was a little bit younger, was that he would always go to these skate parks and do demos. And of course, all the kids wanted to see the 900. He said it's almost become, more of a detriment to him as a skater than anything else, because whenever he goes to any park, everybody wants him to do 900, and he says it takes a lot out of him to actually just spin it enough, and that he's got to actually have a pretty big, massive size ramp vertically to do it, and there's got to be a really big landing zone, because that the amount of not only bails, but there's the amount of energy it takes out of him to be able to spin it consistently and get it ready to be landed takes time too. And he said that also what's interesting to me is that how he, whenever he's done it, because he's only done it, he said like 4 or 5 times, like a handful of times in his life, because of how much effort it takes and how rare it actually is to get a ramp that actually can handle that trick and have it be a good landing point. And I just think that the 900 to me, not because it was televised during a contest, but just like the way that it was done and how long he was trying to do it for over 10, 15 years, is really in itself just a testament to what skateboarding is all about. Because a lot of skateboarders, not just him obviously, but a lot of skateboarders in general have that kind of thing where they may not be necessarily trying to invent a brand new trick on that scale in any way at all, but I feel like a lot of skateboarders have that kind of thing where they are trying to do a trick that for so many years, and just land it cleanly and stick it and that kind of thing. And I just, as an admirer of him as a skater, I just think it's insane how he was able to do it for the first time on a contest format, even though the contest was over. I mean, it was at the X Games in '99, I believe it was, and the contest was over, but it was just cool to watch live, because I was able to watch it live, and it was just cool to see how it went from being a contest to becoming more of a demo session. And he details that in a bunch of interviews too on YouTube, about how like it transitioned from the contest format to just a demo format, because he was like, it didn't matter necessarily that the contest was over. He was just feeling it that day, and he just wanted to land it once and for all and get it done and finally stick it and that kind of thing too. So again, I just feel like that these are the 5 most insane tricks that are not only the source basis for what skateboarding has become nowadays. Because if you think about it, for the most part, overall, if you take away the ollie, kickflip, and heel flip, maybe not the 360 flip, but the first three, if you take away all those three out of skateboarding, then in my opinion, skateboarding would not be what it is now. It maybe wouldn't exist anymore. It maybe would have died out, like completely at some point as well, if it wasn't for Alan Gelfand doing the ollie and then Ronnie Moen taking the ollie and then pushing it further than anyone else could have. So it almost makes me a little bit sad that those skaters don't get as much. I don't say popularity, but as much, just recognition in a way. Although Running Moan does get pretty good recognition, but as far as like for being the real true like fathers of godfathers of skateboarding, for having those tricks be, whether or not whether they were accidentally created or not, they are still the definition or the basis for what everyone does now for skateboarding. Without those being created and invented, I don't know if skateboarding would exist in the same way that it is now. And I know people could argue with that with me, saying like, oh, like the video games pushed it to where it is, and so did like the X Games and TV and all that, which is partially true. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I feel like for real, for like a skateboarding perspective, as far as like hardcore tricks go and how the evolution of the sport really had to get it to go further to that point, you had to have those three tricks being created and being revolutionized and being pushed forward and being learned by all these really now obviously legendary skaters to the point of where they are to be where it is now. Because if you didn't have that happen, I don't think skateboarding would be where it is now in any way. And that's, again, I'm repeating myself again, but I think it's very, very true to the point. So, again, for me, those are the most 5 legendary, consequential tricks in skateboarding history. There's many more that I didn't name off of that are still important, but I feel like those are the 5 ones that are really the basis for what it is. But I love it if you would let me know in the comments below, what do you think are the 5 most consequential tricks of any type at all in skateboarding that made skateboarding what it is now partially, or are part of the reason why it has been pushed to the kind of modern evolution of where it is now. I'd love to hear that as well. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.